When we talk about dynasties in the NBA, most fans immediately think of the Showtime Lakers, the 1990s Bulls, or the Warriors of today. But for nearly 2 decades, one small market team quietly dominated the league with consistency and excellence that may never be replicated. From 1997 to 2017, the San Antonio Spurs became a model of winning, discipline, and unselfish basketball. Yet despite their greatness, many people forget to include them in the conversation of the greatest dynasties ever. So, is the Spurs run the most overlooked dynasty in NBA history? The foundation. The Spurs weren't always elite. After relocating from Dallas in the 1970s, they found early success behind George "Iceman" Gervin. But the franchise didn't reach true contender status until they drafted David Robinson in 1987. Robinson, the Admiral, transformed the team into a perennial powerhouse in the 1990s. But while he collected awards and wins, the Spurs never broke through to the finals. That all changed in the 1996-97 season. Injuries to Robinson and other key players sank the Spurs to just 20 wins, but the setback became a blessing. It set them up to draft a once-in-a-generation talent, Tim Duncan. Around the same time, a relatively unknown executive named Gregg Popovich took over as head coach. The pairing of Pop and Duncan would set the course for 2 decades of dominance. The Duncan Era Begins. Tim Duncan made an immediate impact. In his rookie season, he averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, and over 2 blocks per game, winning Rookie of the Year and making first-team All-NBA. His fundamentals, unselfishness, and quiet leadership meshed perfectly with Robinson, forming the famous Twin Towers. In 1999, the Spurs captured their first championship, with Duncan named Finals MVP. From that point forward, San Antonio never looked back. They became the model of consistency, winning at least 50 games every non-lockout season for the next 18 years. Building the Spurs Way. What made the Spurs special wasn't just Duncan. It was the culture Popovich and the front office created. In a league obsessed with star power and flash, San Antonio built its dynasty differently. They scouted overlooked talent, valued high basketball IQ, and prioritized players who would buy into the team concept. The results were legendary draft steals. In 2001, they picked Tony Parker late in the first round. A year later, they added Manu Ginóbili with the 57th pick. Together with Duncan, the Big Three would form the core of the Spurs dynasty, winning titles across 3 different decades. Around them, Popovich and GM R.C. Buford found hidden gems like Bruce Bowen, who became a prototype for 3-and-D players, and role players like Robert Horry, Boris Diaw, and Patty Mills. The Spurs weren't about egos. They were about system, trust, and development. Championships and evolution. The early 2000s Spurs leaned heavily on Duncan's dominance in the post and suffocating defense. They won titles in 2003, 2005, and 2007, cementing Duncan as the greatest power forward of all time. Parker blossomed into an all-NBA point guard. Ginóbili became the ultimate 6-man, and Popovich perfected load management long before it was trendy, ensuring his stars stayed fresh for the playoffs. But what truly set the Spurs apart was their ability to evolve. In the first half of Duncan's career, they played slow, defensive basketball. By the 2010s, they embraced ball movement, spacing, and a European-style pace and space offense. The shift culminated in their 2014 championship run, where they played what many call the most beautiful basketball in NBA history. The Spurs dismantled the Miami Heat in the finals, with Kawhi Leonard emerging as Finals MVP. The dynasty's end. Even as Duncan aged, the Spurs continued to win. They developed Kawhi Leonard into a superstar, won 67 games in 2016, and pushed into the Western Conference Finals in 2017. But Kawhi's controversial injury against the Warriors and his eventual departure marked the end of an era. Duncan retired, Ginóbili and Parker followed, and the Spurs dynasty quietly closed after 20 years of excellence. The legacy. So why is this dynasty overlooked? Maybe it's because the Spurs lacked flash. They weren't headline chasers, they weren't in a big market, and they weren't built around drama or controversy. Their stars didn't talk much, they just won. But in doing so, they built one of the most impressive runs in sports history. 5 championships, 22 straight playoff appearances, and the highest winning percentage in NBA history for 2 decades. For 20 years, the Spurs were the standard of excellence, and they did it with humility, discipline, and teamwork. The San Antonio Spurs may never get the same shine as the Bulls, Lakers, or Warriors. But if greatness is measured by consistency, culture, and championships, then the Spurs belong at the very top of the list. And that begs the question, is this the most overlooked dynasty in NBA history?